The culture program in Portugal focuses on the role that culture, cultural heritage and arts plays for local and regional development. To pursue this mission, the program aims to promote, with 2 open calls and 2 predefined projects, the safeguarding of cultural heritage and the access improvement to contemporary arts in low-density territories. One of the main goals is the strengthening of cultural identity and the protection of coastal culture heritage for local communities, development and empowerment. With the Waterworld project, the National Centre for Underwater Archaeology will be improved with conservation, monitoring underwater heritage equipments and knowledge sharing between national experts and the Norwegian Maritime Museum. The expected outputs will be the knowledge spreading and access to underwater cultural assets, the capacity building of experts and researchers, and general public awareness on the importance of this vulnerable heritage. On a long term, we believe this project will contribute to foster a heritage cooperation network and to strengthen our connection to the sea.
Hello, welcome to the new headquarters of the National Centre for Underwater Archaeology here in Lisbon, Portugal, and it's my very great pleasure to introduce to you the predefined project Waterworld under the cooperation with EEA grants. Portugal has always been a seafaring country. Since prehistory we have traces of prehistoric boats from a river up in the north of Portugal. That's evidence that from prehistoric times we have been engaged with seafaring or riverfaring in this case, but we've been in love with water. And of course, as you know, there is the great story of the Portuguese discoveries. And with that story, there are countless shipwrecks around the world of Portuguese origin, but also in the Portuguese coast. Portugal is a coastal country, of course. It's in a strategic location at the end of Europe, making a gateway between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. And of course, there are countless shipwrecks also in the Portuguese shore of Portuguese ships, but also from other nations. All these shipwrecks tell the stories of countless interactions in the globalized world that Portuguese began to uncover during the discovery. So we have ships that went to India to trade pepper and all those goods that came from the Indian subcontinent. We have the stories of fishermen, sailormen, of great battles that were fought on the Portuguese coast, also of cod fishing, that we share the love of cod with Norway, and this project has the great objective of capacity building and skills for management and conservation of underwater archaeology here in Portugal. Underwater archaeology deals with a finite set of resources that survive in delicate condition in the seabeds all over the world. So one of the objectives of this project is to promote the conservation of this heritage. Several paths will be undertaken to arrive to those objectives, as it will be explained by my colleagues later in the video. But there is a great concern also with sharing the knowledge that will arise from this project with the general public, share the scientific information in accessible terms to the great audiences that deserve to know more about this magnificent, wonderful heritage that we have deep in the sea. Sometimes not that deep. Mostly they are near to the coastline, and that's why the focus of our project will unfold. Yes, indeed, we want to share the knowledge with the general public, but we also we aim to engage deeper with local communities and underwater archaeology. In order to do this, under the cooperation with the Norwegian Maritime Museum, we aim to list, record, inventory all archaeological sites, underwater archaeological sites in Portugal. But of course, there has been underwater archaeology in Portugal for many years now, and we have a huge archive, if you can apply the term, to the remains of shipwrecks that have been identified and excavated. A few of them are being conserved, a few are waiting to be conserved. This is where we are going to do some of the conservation, also with the help of 3D techniques to build replicas, 3D models, in order to have that knowledge, to have that image of those remains. With the final goal of returning them to the local communities. That is to say, we want some of the materials to go back to the local museums, to the local institutions that will be able to show them to the local populations and also to tourists to enhance all this great activity that we have surrounding the sea right now in Portugal. There is a major strategy for the sea for the next decade, and underwater archaeology is very much part of it.
Archaeology is very important to understand our past. In National Center of Underwater Archaeology, we have information that has been collected since more than 30 years from now. This information is not only archaeological finds that were collected by fishermen, communities, professional divers, but also information that is on database, information from bibliography, from security records, from historical documents, and that all these finds and information documentation, they are very important to know and to identify what we have, and therefore to protect and safeguard the underwater heritage. All these archaeological informations show us a common past, not only from Portugal, but with all the countries around the world, especially in Europe. We have more than 7,000 archaeological informations of sites, and we have to systemize all that information to show the importance of Atlantic coast and Portugal sea to the world, because not only the history of Portugal is at sea, but all the history of humankind is also in our sea, in Portugal Sea.
The underwater environments allow to preserve most of the archaeological materials. The lack of oxygen underwater, and if they are deep buried in the sediments underwater, all these materials, or most of the materials, can survive for decades, centuries, and sometimes even for millennia. And that's why when we can get materials in the underwater archaeology that we cannot just find in a terrestrial excavation. But at the same time, what these conditions, these waterlogged conditions that allow to preserve most of the materials, it's also a problem for the conservation of them, because after when we took them out of water, we just cannot take them to dry in atmospheric conditions without any conservation procedures to support that process. Especially when we talk about some materials like wood, that if you just take them out of water and let them dry in the air, they just shrink and deform and lose most of the information that they have. That's why the conservation when we talk about underwater archaeology, it's a very important process, because it allows we can just dry in a very controlled way all these materials, in order that we can study them, that we can record them, and then we can even expose them in some museums or just can storage in the conditions like this storage where we are. The conservation is a very important factor in the conservation in the underwater archaeology. That's why this project that we developed within the grants with the Norwegian Maritime Museum, it's very important because we can just share all these experience and knowledge and procedures, conservation procedures that they are developing for a long time, and that's why all these bilateral relations that we are trying to develop within the course of the project will be fundamental to achieve better results in the conservation of the underwater archaeological material. We kept all these woods in water in these tanks while they are waiting for these final conservation procedures. After that, they will be put in new tanks, not just with water, with some consolidating material, the PEG, that will replace the water that is within the wood cells, with this material. Only after that, these archaeological wood pieces will be able to be exposed in atmospheric conditions and finally be delivered to the places where they came from, the local museums, so we can tell all these histories about the wrecks, the boats, the shipbuilding tradition that is connected to those places and to those people.